All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for being here today. We're so excited. This is our first roundtable of many. We'll be hosting them every month with different topics and different speakers. But today we're going to talk about type safety with Velo, and we're here with Joshua Alphonse. He is a developer advocate for Wix. And my name is Grace Myers. I'm the social media manager for Devs on Wix/Velo. And yeah, thank you so much. We'll save room for questions at the end, so feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll address them at the end of this, and I'll let you take it away. Thanks, Joshua.
Thank you, Grace. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for coming to join us about type safety with Velo. So this is a breakout, or I would say this is a roundtable actually for anyone from any type of skill level. So this is definitely something a little bit different from what we normally post. But before I get started as well, I also want to say that I've taken some inspiration from some blog posts from our outreach team that has created some educational materials behind type safety. And I figured that this was a good idea to have a session and speak about this amongst our community and get us familiar with type safety with Velo. So I'm sure some of you are aware of what TypeScript is and JSDocs. So we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. So a little bit about me. I'm a developer advocate from New York. I love music, love collecting records. I'm obsessed. And when I'm not in front of this screen coding or doing any work, I'm definitely playing video games. So I'm obsessed with Elden Ring right now. It's really the hardest game out. And honestly, I don't know when I'm going to beat that, probably the next 3 years or so. So we'll see. So Grace will be dropping some resources in the chat as well as I talk and go along. So definitely check them out. Like I mentioned, there's resources that I looked at and learned from myself amongst people that worked at Wix, and then also some forum posts that we have from Jacob as well that you can check out to understand the compiler that we use for Velo by Wix. So let's talk about the scenario. So we can always see within large Velo projects, sometimes you'll come across pages that have hundreds to thousands of lines of code, right? So this could be a type of a mess at times because this is could be very confusing, especially when you want to reuse part of your code amongst a few different site pages, right? So imagine on the front end, you want to be able to reuse the same functionality for a button somewhere else, which we'll get into much later. And having to redo that on every single page can be quite messy. And we want to have a centralized place to do this. But also we want a place so that we can understand where our errors are coming up and why they are actually appearing, right? So this is where TypeScript comes into play and why it's so powerful for JavaScript. So also that's another place where our public JavaScript file comes into play because it allows us to have access to all of our pages on the front end and the back end, right? But that's cool for reusing code on the public JS files, but there is a problem. This method doesn't work very well because there's no autocomplete features or ID validations for the $W selector on the public JS files, right? So, which is a pain because when you want to make an informed decision with your code, you can't necessarily do that. And when you want to understand the type and what you're working with and when you're getting errors back, you're not going to receive that in the public JS file in comparison to the page code. And there's a number of reasons for that. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more as we go through. So continue to ask any questions you have, check out the resources as well that Grace is putting in the chat. But we'll start to dive in a little bit more now. So the solution behind this. So the solution is to use JSDocs, TypeScript, and Velo. So as you can see below, we have our TypeScript statement, and we have our TypeScript statement that's just defining what the myString variable is. What is the data type? So the data type for this variable is a string, right? So we can do this in TypeScript to define the data type for whatever variable, and then for our case, it would be elements, right, on our page, depending on the type of data type that we wanted to receive, and we're going to define it by. So if this was a number or integer, how you want to describe it, we would have, like, let's say something like let my number and then colon, it would be number. That would be the type from TypeScript. So the TypeScript statement above could become equivalent to JavaScript statement with JSDocs annotation. And if you're not familiar with JSDocs, we're going to be defining that in a moment. But basically, this is the same exact statement. The one above and below mean the same exact thing. So if you're not familiar with TypeScript, we can talk about it a bit more now. TypeScript is a JavaScript with static typing. So static typing you can see in many other languages like Java, C, C++, and that's because we are actually defining the type of all the variables we have, which helps a lot with error checking, and you can avoid all these weird hidden errors that you'll see within JavaScript, like undefined is not a function. That's one of the most annoying errors to get sometimes. So, and then you kind of like will pull your hair out trying to figure out what the heck does that actually mean. So TypeScript is a programming language that was created by Microsoft, and it's just a superset of JavaScript. And it has its own compiler, and it's its own typed language, and it helps build things. And you can also see bugs in build time long before you actually go live and run time with your app, right? So it's easier to refactor your code this way because you also have central places where you keep your types and how you control that throughout your entire application. Why are we using JSDocs? JSDocs are a great way to generate documentation for all of your functions in line in your code. And then you can also use JSDocs to actually generate an HTML file afterwards that serves as documentation for your entire website, which is really cool. We won't get into generating the HTML file here, but more so into learning about how we could use type safety to create better reusable code throughout our entire projects. So with TypeScript, JSDocs can help what the functions are doing. You can see the parameters it takes and optionally the types of the parameters. So if we enable the type checking, Velo will help catch those errors, and they will try to pass unexpected pass unexpected types. So some things to know before we start to dive in and go to the editor. Velo uses a TypeScript compiler for autocomplete and code validations. So if you check out that blog post that Grace posted, actually it's a forum post that Jacob has inside the forum about the TypeScript compiler that Velo uses, you'll learn a little bit more about how the autocomplete happens, right? So Velo adds and removes a property that for this target element and page element map type. So we'll dive into what the page element map type is, but essentially every single element that we have from buttons, images to even event listeners all have different types according to how Velo is created. So which is only available from the page code in the front end. But today we're going to figure out how to use JSDocs so that we can also bring that ability to our public JS files and we can reuse our code at ease. So Velo developers can use TypeScript typing system to validate their JS code within Velo. So cool. So we have some facts that we have to get started with. And now let's start to go to the editor and speak about this a little bit more. Awesome. So we mentioned here that we're going to use a public JS file. So I already have a JS file that's already created. It's blank. I'm just going to separate these between old and new so I can show you the difference between some of these files. Cool. So again, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, or I'll open this up towards the end so we can all talk about it as well. But if you have anything that you want to get out now and you think you're going to forget, I would suggest to type it in the chat as well. Cool. So first things first, we have a public JS file that's created. And then we also want to make sure that we have a page code file created as well. So we have a about page right now that's just importing a function that I'm going to be creating on this page later down the line. But for now, what we're going to do, we're going to go to this public JS file, and we're going to start to show you the experience of what it's like to not have any type of type safety or ID validation in a public JS file. So we can begin by creating a export function called init page, which is really good. And we can have that init page, and we can name this whatever we'd like, of course. And we're also going to be selecting a button as well. But first, let's go and make a variable for such. So we'll have button, and we're going to have that equal to $w. And notice how I'm typing using $w in this public JS file. And as I'm typing this, you'll see right here with the hints that I'm given that right now I have a selector, and the type of the selector, because we have TypeScript as the compiler here, it's letting me know that the selector that I'm creating here is a string, but also the type of what I'm providing is of type any. So within TypeScript, type any can be pretty much any type, and it's a little bit ambiguous. There are use cases for the any type when you're using TypeScript, but you still want to get specific so that your application is actually compiling the correct types over time, and you can have the right type safety for what you're creating. So that being said, as I continue to type out a button, which I have here on the page, right? So I have this button 1 for go to gallery on our page code. Yep. And on top of that, right now, I'm not getting any type of autocomplete. So even if I type in the full button 1 or button 2, I'm not getting any type of autocomplete. And this page that I have in the public.js file is not recognizing anything. Even if I go and create an event handler here for onClick, right? And I can add my code here. So if I wanted to add a function, let's say I wanted to use something like Wix location 2 to, like, when I click this button, I wanted to take me to the gallery, right? I can also import other APIs that I want internally, and I can add functionalities to it. Our only concern with this is that we're not getting any type of ID validation or any type of suggestions. So we need this within our code to make informed decisions. And the autocomplete also doesn't happen within this event handler because the methods and the properties don't work and the type checking is not working. So in order for us to get this type checking to work, we have to be able to feed our public.js file parameters from the front end in order to go by, right? So when you're using JSDocs, which we'll get into, you could still use the same things from TypeScript, like the @type form, and then also the @params. So in order, like I mentioned, in order for us to get our types from the front end and bring it to our public.js file, we need to send parameters. So before we start creating our own parameters in the back end, in our public.js file, let's just go here to this one page that I already have coded out. And this is a front end page. And as I mentioned before, we need to be able to pass params, and that params, the page elements file that we have here, the page elements map, is going to be able to define all the different types that we have based on all the elements. And just to give you a sneak peek on all the types that we have actually before we dive into that, I just created this file right here. This is actually going to serve no purpose, but I just wanted to keep it all in the same editor. And these are all the different types that we have for each and every single one of our front end elements. So you can see I have checkboxes, buttons, boxes, right? So we're going to be using these types to define exactly how we want to use these elements on the front end. Cool. But that being said, we'll see right here at the top, we have some JSDocs that are already implemented. So we have our template, the page element maps. So right now we're naming that as T, right? And when we're using params within JSDocs and TypeScript, we first use the params here, but we also have to put the name of the type that we want to be working with. Right now, our type for the parameter is T, because based off our template, and we're going to be naming this selector. So you start with the type, and then you end it with the selector. To make it even more explicit, on this next line of code, we have our params, and then our type is the event handler, which will be our onClick, and then we're naming that event handler when we're using it. But our params are also parameters that are going to be serving inside of our event handlers and also our functions, or just our functions when we're moving forward, right? So if you notice here on our click handler, we are looking for our selector as an argument and also the event handler that we have here in our params, but we specify the type of those things. Now, this is going to help us throughout our development, because if we specify the types when we're coding, it will be able to catch these errors in build time and not have to wait in runtime to figure out that this element was undefined or something like that. And that can be really annoying. So if I go here and I type in like our element, you'll see that I'm getting autocomplete already on the front end. So I have const element T extends key of page element maps. So remember, we need that page element maps to get all the different types from our elements that we have on our page. And every single page is going to have a unique map of how the page elements maps goes for them. but the names of the types are going to be the same, but the map of how you have things are already situated, because each page is going to have different types. It's going to be a bit different here. And it also comes from the any type as well. So the autocomplete is cool. And you can also use this for the return statement too. So you can see that, we're already getting some things back from that. And we have this error here for onClick. And the reason why we have this error here for onClick is because the property for onClick only exists for the button and other elements that actually use this functionality. So TypeScript's able to catch this ahead of time as well to let us know that this is already ambiguous, since the element here is actually of type any. It's giving us access to all of these other page elements like text input, button input, gallery. It's a bit ambiguous. So it's not necessarily sure on the specifics on the type that we're going to be using, which would be the element, right? And not every single element has an onClick function available for it. Cool. So that's how it works on the front end, right? But we want to be able to bring the same experience to our public JS files. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file. But before going in a little deeper, let's take a look at what JSDocs looks like when we want to define types. So you can go about this in a few different ways, but first we'll start with the way that you may be familiar with if you know TypeScript and using the type annotation here that we have inside of our JSDocs. We just imported Wix location too, just to show you that you can use an API as well. But this export function here for the init page, we have our type, and we also are defining it by the button, right? So I can go about this in many different ways depending on the elements I have on my page. So right now I have a text box, an input, and I also have our visit gallery button as well, right? And then I can even add even more elements to our new init.js page here as well if I want to go down. So I even have text 5, and our text is here at the top. And I can start to define all these different types throughout our page. So it's really easy to get started with JSDocs. It's just like writing a regular JS comment, but it allows us to annotate our code in line, and we can actually start to use TypeScript to define our types there as well. It's very powerful. And again, you can use JSDocs to make your own generated HTML documentation for it. But it's a good place for you to keep track of your work. So again, we just define the type. And with type, right, when we're using this is a little bit different from params. The difference is that with @type, all you have to do is say that it's a type, and you give the type of which the element is. We're not really specifying and giving it a name. Params are a lot easier for us to use because that's how we're going to be able to pass our parameters from our front end code on our page code to our public JS file. So right now, this is only going to exist here within this public JS file. And that also brings another problem to play. But let's go about this a different way. And let's start to use params in this public JS file. So we need argument annotations with the param tag. So if you want autocomplete elements for an ID validation in this public JS file with the selector, especially for $W, we should pass the elements explicitly in the page code to the public file as a function arguments. So the way that we go about this, right? So let me just comment this out right now, but I'll keep it there in case you want to, take a look at it as well as I'm going. We're still inside of this public JS file, and we're going to use JSDocs to also specify our params with the param tag. So remember, we have our button on the page. So remember, we're doing this for all of our front end needs. So we have our button 1, and we also have our input as well. So let's just work with those two. So we have our @param, and then we're also going to define the type. So remember, I had this types.js file here I just made just to show you all the different types based on elements that we have on the page. So we have our button, checkbox, documents, everything else. We're just going to use $w.button. So we have our $w.button. And look at something cool that's about to happen. So notice how now we're getting an autocomplete for this page element and this type that we have for the button page element. And it's using TypeScript in the interface annotation here as well to tell us a little bit more about the type of this element, right? It's giving us the information right here in this hint here, telling us a button on your site, a button can contain text, icons, and both, and changing buttons content updates its layout accordingly to the following rules. So you can learn a lot about all the elements that you have that I had described in the types.js file there. And you can continue to go down this line and figure out all you need to about the type of element that you're working with. But we'll just stick to button right now, since this is like one of the only elements we have on the page that's going to have functionality. But then you notice I get an error as well. When you're using params, you have to give it a name. So let's give it a name of button. And we also have an input as well, that input field here. This is input 1. And for input 1, we're going to pretty much do the same thing. Param $w dot. So let's figure out what this is here. It's an input, so this element would be a text input. So text input is an element for capturing small amounts of text, right? Cool. And we also have to give this a name of input. So outside of our JSDoc here, now that we have that documented, let's go ahead and start to create some functionality with an export function, because we're going to be using this export function to then bring to our front-end page code so we can implement and see how this type safety is going to be working, right? So we're already here in the back end, or already here in this public JS file, already able to get the autocomplete based on the types that we have, but we want to see on the front end autocomplete on the selectors. So let's go ahead and create an export function. And we can say init page. But remember, because we're using params, we have arguments that we have to satisfy here. So our arguments here are literally just button and input. So I love how this is all going here. So notice how the errors are gone from the top, and we have our arguments as well. And your code can go right inside of this. So our button, we can create an on-click function as well. And this on-click function can be, let's say, Wix location .to, and let's see if we can go to like https://wix.com/velo, right? Cool. So still within our function, just remember we have two arguments here. We have the button and the input, so we can't ignore our input at all. All right. So with that being said, since we can't ignore our input, let's use our input. And we could pick any one of these event handlers as well. So we can use something like onChange. Let's just say that for example purposes. And for onChange, we're going to need our event. And then we're also going to add some functionality here. So we're going to have let new value. Let's say we want to change the value or get the value from this input box. And we're going to have it equal to event.target.value. And to use that new value, we'll do console log just to have this here for example purposes. Cool. So it seems like this is ready to go, and we can export this to the front end. So just to kind of go over this once more, we have the export function, the init page. We have to use params because in order for us to work with our front end page, we need arguments to pass over. If we use just the type annotation here, this type tag, we don't have any arguments that are required. It's just the type. So that's why we need, in order for us to work with the page elements, we're going to need parameters. Cool. So now let's start to get to use our init page functionality that we have here. Let me just check on time real quick. We have some more time. And let's look at the way that things are suggested. So let's just go here to our contact page. Let's change some things up. So I have button to input as well. Great. So with that being said, on this contact page, we want to first import our function that we have from our public JS file. So we have our old init page here, or our new init page. And let's just get the name of our function. Let's just change this to something else. Init to win it. All right, let's just say it's that, just for fun purposes here. And we go back to our page code, and we're going to import our init to win it function. Init to win it from our public JS file, public slash, we have new, what is called new init. Let's just say that's it. These are not the best file names, but here we go. This is where we are right now. And so what we now need to do is use our init to win it function and pass those arguments that we need. Now, those arguments that we're looking for are, if we go back to our page here, our public JS file, the arguments we're looking for are the button and the input. Now, the reason why we're looking for these arguments here is because we are checking the types and we're making sure that we're passing the correct parameters through every single time, especially if we want to reuse this code in other pages and so forth moving on, right? So let's check out what this looks like, because as we go ahead and type this out, we'll I'll have us run into some errors on the way. So with $W on ready, what we're going to do now is use our init to win it functionality. And look at that. We have our functions, init to win it, $W button, input, text input. So it's giving me the types, and it's also letting me understand the params that I have from our public JS file, which is very powerful to have, right? It's a lot of information right there that you showed, so we can understand the types that we're using from every single function and so forth, right? So let's take a look further as we go and type out this function here. And remember, we have our params. So inside of here, again, look, we have our button. It's looking for the $W button type, and it's also looking for the $W .text input type as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and satisfy those arguments. Do $W, and notice how now as well, you'll start to have some things in the autocomplete that makes sense. So I have my button, button 2. So that's satisfied, right? Because I have my button. You know, it's expected 2 arguments. So let's add the input argument as well. So we have an input here. So I have my input at the bottom here. This is input 1. So let's take a look at what that looks like here. And it looks like from the looks of this, that our init to win it and our button are satisfying the arguments. Now, if I was to bring in, let's say, a different page element, like a text box or something like that, it's a little bit different from input. It's going to have a different type. So let me take this text out of here, actually. But you know what? That actually works too. So we can use this. We have our text. Let's just say we need to add this. And our text and our input are of 2 different types. So if I was going to try to pass an argument for text number 7, we should get an error back from our JSDocs and TypeScript to let us know that we cannot use our text 7 here. So the argument of type text is not assignable to the parameter of type text input. Type text is missing the following properties from type in text input and input max and min, which is a very powerful thing for us to see. So now we know the arguments that we want to pass in order to make this functionality work. If they're not of the same type, it's not going to happen, which is very powerful for JavaScript developers, because we always come across these weird errors that we have to debug and figure out what's next and have to dig deeper. With TypeScript, there's really no guessing. It gives you exactly what you need. What you see is kind of what you get. And it's a very powerful tool. And it's also great with JSDocs because you can annotate this and document it over time. So again, I'll just kind of go back here and input 1. We'll save that here. And let's see. We have our init to win it here. And let's go and publish this page. And I'll get rid of this text here. I don't need that. And since we're using Wix location, we're going to publish it because it's not going to work from a preview page. So we'll publish it. and we can go and view the site. And let's just go to our contact page really quickly. So remember, I passed the Wix location 2 functionality from our public JS file to our front end as well. And we'll click the button. And there we go. Now we're on the Velo by Wix page. So all we did was we went into the public JS file, we defined our types, we passed it to the front end, and we even saw an example of how if we try to pass an argument for a different type, which would be a different page element, it wasn't going to work. So it's super powerful because we don't want to go in guessing, especially if we're doing something on build time, right? Which is really great for us. It saves us time, and we don't have to go back and forth with, let's say, within preview to get an error within the log there. Cool. Let me actually, because I have my page here hiding our toolbar, it just added a new tab. So let me just go delete this out of the way, and we'll head back to the editor. Cool. So there's other ways we can go about this, writing params a lot smoother in our backend, but I'm glad that we were able to see the errors that were there. But let's make this a little bit cleaner and kind of give it a syntax similar to what you would kind of see in CSS in a way. It kind of has that same type of look, but more so looking like interfaces in TypeScript. And interfaces in TypeScript are really powerful because they're ways that you can compile all of your types within your file and have it there that you can reference. And we're going to use our public JS file to do so. So let's go here to our new init page real quick, and let's make some adjustments to how this is going to look. So our app params here, what we're going to do, let's get this out the way. Let's just change it up a bit. We have our app param, we use the param tag. Cool. And within this param tag, let's see, one sec. Oh, I said ORAM, not param. That's why I'm like, where are the stars? Param. And then right here, you see my error is as name, but there's no parameter with that name. So I will give it a name here. And within it, we will actually say button. And this button is $W. Button. Cool. Actually need to, we're going to give this a name. So this is going to be the name elements. Elements giving us a thing. There's no elements, but there's no parameter with such name. So hold on, let's just debug this real quick and figure out what we can do. One sec. So to start JSDocs, we will do /**, and we'll do app param. And then in our params, we'll also have this here, and we'll name it elements. Don't know why we're getting this here. But we're getting errors from JSDocs, which is good. I'm also trying to figure out here why we are getting this, and now it's not giving us such stars. Strange. But moving forward, I will continue with the syntax, and I'll show you over time. So here we go. This works out here. So we'll have button, $W, button. We'll define the type here with $W, button. And then we'll also end this here. And then we'll also have our input. So input. Input. So we're defining our types here. And that's it. Cool. And let me just double check here, guys. Don't know why I'm getting this error now here, but I'm going to continue to debug. And let me just double check with my notes as well. Make sure we're getting the right thing. Let's just see. Yeah, so it's always going to give us this weird error, even from the things I have in my notes here, but it's just still work. So that being said, let's go off and also create another export function. Init page. Within this init page, this is where we're going to define our interface. So we have our button. And okay, that's why I did backwards. So I'm getting this error just because I never specified my what my interface is going to be yet. So we got rid of that. So the debug is over. But we have our button, our input, and then we also have, that's it. So we can still use reuse the code that we have here. So let me just go and look at the scope that we have defined. And I'll take this out as well. And within this file here, what we're going to do is add in our same code that we have, and we'll format it, right? So this is just a cleaner way for us to write our params all into one. So we don't necessarily have to write out params every single time separately. Now, we can still use the functionality the same exact way I had it from written before. This is just a cleaner and more syntactical, sugary way to use it. So now, again, you can add as many different elements that are there. You can look at types.js as well here. And I can also provide you guys a resource with all of these different types that we have here. And take a look at Jacob's blog post or forum post on this, and also the blog post that I posted from Alexander, who did a great job explaining this, that I took lots of inspiration for just to show you guys this today. I'll make sure that you guys are able to take visibility on all these different types, and we can definitely make some content on this. So that being said, right here, my init to init function is not there, but I have our init page as well. And I can go and call this again. And input one has changed as well, but that's because there's no expected arguments here. We were expecting one argument instead of two. We'll just have to go back inside of our new page and just create arguments within the functionality that we have here as well. But we can separate our concerns instead of having to put everything into one function as well. We're not looking for it to be on the same page. Don't know why my pages are moving, but cool. But pretty much, guys, that is type safety with Velo. I hope you guys took away a lot from this. We definitely want to open this up to any questions that you guys do have. I'd love to hear what you have to say if you have any questions about it. I'm sure you guys have some things in the chat as well that I saw. A couple of you were there. So you guys want to come and join in, and let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I have a question. What is the point of this? I mean, what does it add? How does it help?
Yeah, so with type safety, it helps you with large projects. So you aren't passing through different functions with types that are undefined that you're not aware of. So TypeScript helps us keep aware of all those different types we have throughout our entire project. So if you have a large scale project that you're working on that you want to reuse code throughout different elements of different pages, this is a good way to go about it. So you can document what you're creating over time and still keep it within a type sensitive scope. So look at statically typed languages like Java and C, C++. Those languages don't let you pass anything without having the correct data types when you're passing arguments as well for certain functionalities. So TypeScript is really, really, really cool. I use it for like even things in React as well, like TypeScript and React, and I really haven't turned back on just using regular JavaScript when I use it in those cases. And I think it's really cool that you can use JSDocs here within Velo, which I was not aware of until I found some of those resources that we shared with you all. But the compiler that we have built into Velo actually works off of TypeScript. Some of you may know that Velo by Wix is the stack we use to create it is React and TypeScript. And inside of the IDE here, we also have a TypeScript compiler because TypeScript compiles things on build time as you're going out and typing it.
And someone was asking how they can find all of the types.
If you want to find all the types, I definitely suggest looking at that blog post. For now, I don't believe there's any other type of documentation on that as of now, but that blog post has it, and we'll make some content on it as well.
Could you share your types.js file too?
Yeah, I definitely can. But that types.js file you will find on that blog post too. So
okay, never mind.
everything there, yeah, everything is there for the most part, and it even gives you an inside look of how our developers have created this whole entire process too.
Joshua, have you shared that blog?
Yeah, Grace shared it in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, if you scroll up, I can copy and paste it in there again. And to just clarify, it was the blog, not the forum post, right? Joshua?
Both. You can post both. I think
Okay, I'll post them again.
the forum post will give you an inside look of how the compiler works within Velo. So similar to what Bruno is asking right now. So this is a user experience, it's still JSDocs, but JavaScript, but the compiler is in TypeScript. Yep. So the compiler we're using is in TypeScript. So check out that forum post by Jacob as well, where he definitely goes into depth of how the compiler works. It's like a really short forum post. And then also that blog post from Alexander, who I think did an amazing job on explaining this as well. Just gave me the inspiration to come here and just share with the community today. So I use TypeScript on my normal day-to-day projects on a personal level, but just being able to see that we have the power of using JSDocs to add type safety to what we're creating in terms of big projects here with Velo is something that's really, really cool, and hoping that you guys can take something from this and add it to your large-scale projects as well.
And this is recorded, by the way, so there's a question in the chat. So we'll be posting this on YouTube, and you can re-watch the entire thing.
Yep. And you can also find, we'll have it on YouTube. I think right after this, it automatically posts to YouTube, and you'll see in the Discord channel that it'll be there posted. Yeah.
Yes, and I think there's one more question maybe we didn't get. It's from Bruno, and they're asking, so this is the user experience, but still JSDocs plus JavaScript, but the compiler is TypeScript. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
What is the channel of Discord? Brian, if you haven't been in our Discord yet, if you guys could drop the link to our Discord channel, our Discord background.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can.
Will
do
Velo
that
support
right
TypeScript in the future? And yeah, you can install Corvid types using npm. There are a few wrappers that are available. I will say there's a really cool wrapper right now, but it's actually deprecated. It was really cool that someone internally had made as well for TypeScript. So I believe it's going to be coming soon. I can't make any promises, but I wouldn't doubt if that is on the way to having TypeScript involved inside of our Velo projects, just like how you have a JS file and a TS file. TypeScript is really important, and Wix loves TypeScript overall. They use it for everything. So, and you'll see within our next roundtables, we're going to take an even deeper dive into some other Wix products and features on the open source side, not even just Velo, where we'll tackle things like TypeScript, some of our open source tools like Stylable, and that's a whole other experience of how to practice, TypeScript and JavaScript within your projects that you're creating. But yeah, go ahead and join our Discord server. We'll be having office hours there, posting about when we have events. And as we go through time and we have more information for you to talk about DevCon, you can check out some information there and on the website as well.
And we do actually have office hours within our Discord tomorrow. We always have them every other Thursday, and it's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you can make that, you can bring any questions that you have, just chat with other developers. It's just a totally open space for you to bring up whatever you'd like to.
Yep.
And that's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And yeah, his blog has so many resources I think you guys can benefit from. So definitely take a look, go through there, and we'd love to hear your feedback too on this session as well. If it was helpful for you, if it wasn't helpful for you, what other topics would you like to dive into? We want to be able to bring you guys some more advanced content for you. So we're going to be bringing in some product leaders as well from our teams to come and join and talk about some cool things like Velo packages, blocks, and all the other things moving forward. So we definitely love to get you involved. And even things outside of Velo too. We have a lot of cool open source projects that you guys can check out for all of our developers that are interested in learning things in React and other frameworks in JavaScript too, that Wix offers that we'll go into, like I mentioned, Styleable. There are many tutorials about, yep, and he has a lot, Alexander has a lot of repeater stuff, and you know, it's a wealth of knowledge. So Enos, you're right, definitely check that out. But yeah, so if you guys have any other questions as well, I know we're running out of time, but feel free to hit us up on Discord. You know, we're all there. You can find us as the mods and the DevRel team in our server. So if you have any questions you want to hit us up directly, go ahead. And if you have any suggestions about any of sessions that you want to talk about, feel free. And we're also open to having some sessions along with you guys as the community members as well. So if you have an interesting topic that you'd like to collaborate with us on and speak about, we're definitely open to it just to share with our community. And we'd love to connect. Oh, and Grace also posted our Twitter. We have a Twitter now, so come check us out on Twitter.
Yep. Yes, very new. We're very excited. Yeah, if there's, are there any last questions? We have about 10 minutes left.
And actually, let me share my screen once more and just kind of go over what we talked about as well, just to wrap things up, if there's no other questions. So things to know, just remember that Velo uses TypeScript to compile it to autocomplete and add code validations. Velo adds and removes properties for this target elements using the page elements map type, which allows you to have access to all of the different types on our page elements. So like we saw, that list that we were talking about, types.js, you can find that in that blog post as well. And Velo developers can use TypeScript typing system to validate their JS code within Velo. So this is a step in the right direction for you when you're creating these large projects. And don't forget, definitely, like I said, contact us, and thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, again, hit us up directly, and we'll be posting this on YouTube.
Yeah, you got one more question, actually. Somebody asked, is there any plan to actually be able to write TypeScript in Velo? Which was also my question.
Yeah. I can't confirm or deny if it's going to happen or not. I think that it's something that a lot of people are looking forward to have within the editor. But for now, I think this is a really good way to add type safety to your process of being a developer within Velo. But definitely, hopefully it will come soon. I can also send you guys a NPM package. It's deprecated right now, but I think it's a good way to look at some of the innovations that are happening, even with people that are working at Wix on the public forum, on the public level, that we're trying to create these type of solutions with TypeScript and Velo. So I would expect probably soon we'll see some type of adoption, but I love TypeScript in all their aspects of JavaScript. So hopefully, you know, I mean, the TypeScript community is really big right now, and it feels like they're winning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve, for the great question.
Yes, thank you for the great questions. There is another one from Ronnie. How is this different than the built-in type checker Velo has already built in?
Yeah, so the built-in type checker is using TypeScript. I think the difference here is that you can use JSDocs to define your types and then also write annotations and documentation within your code. JSDocs also help you generate HTML file that will document everything that you did as well. So you can have a place of reference. So this is also really good because this techniques that I showed you is because it allows you to reuse code amongst different pages using your public JS file, and then also giving some type of type validation from your public files into your front end page code. So it goes hand in hand with what you've asked, Ronnie, and you'll be able to put those those techniques together by using the hints that you have from the type checker, and then being able to reuse the code in your public JS files and know exactly what you're working with. And if you hope that answers your question, and yeah, no problem, Bruno. And yeah, thanks guys. Thank you for coming.